When you are gone, will anyone remember your story? Unknown. Flavor text of Tale's End. For the better part of almost 2 decades, Nicol Bolas has been a villainous shadow looming over the Magic the Gathering storyline. Ever since his return during the events of the Time Spiral block, this Elder Dragon has planned to regain his power lost during the Mending, aiming to achieve godhood once again. Ultimately, Bolas's plans reached their end during the events of War of the Spark, where the dragon's endgame was thwarted by the actions of the citizens of Ravnica, the Gatewatch, and his own twin brother, Ugin. In the end, Bolas was stripped of his power and name, and was interred as a prisoner in his former meditation realm. But what if the Mending transpired without the involvement of Nicol Bolas? What would change in the multiverse if one of the oldest and most evil planeswalkers were to never return from beyond death? How would the current story differ as a result? In today's video, I'll not be exploring a known aspect of the Magic story. Instead, I'll be exploring what could have been if events played out just a little bit differently. For this discussion, let us assume that Nicol Bolas faced a complete defeat at the hands of Tetsuo Umezawa. In our timeline, he is able to persevere as a spirit until he is able to regain his physical body during the temporal crisis. In this theoretical timeline, however, Umezawa is somehow able to completely annihilate the Elder Dragon, removing him from existence entirely. What are some consequences this new timeline might experience? The first difference is the fate of Leshrac the Nightwalker. Without Bolas to defeat him, this ancient evil will go on to afflict the rest of the multiverse with his own dark schemes. During the temporal crisis, he was able to attain the rotting touch of Phage by draining them through Jeska. Should Leshrac be allowed to roam free, it's undoubtable that he would become a significant threat to the multiverse on his own. After the events of the temporal crisis, Nicol Bolas would savage the plane of Amonkhet, killing off the entire adult population, manipulating the minds of the gods, and repurposing their culture to fit his own twisted ambition. Should the Forever Serpent never return, the people of Noctamun would still face the looming threat of the Curse of Wandering, but they would have the protection of not only the Heckma, but all 8 of their pantheon's gods. The trials, a test of the virtues that each god embodies, would still take place, but without the encroachment of Bolas, they would occur only once per sun cycle. They would serve as a great event in honor of the gods, rather than serving as a selection process for Bolas's undead army. Perhaps, in time, the people of Amonkhet would be able to devise a way to strike out beyond the protection of the Heckma and breathe life into the world beyond. Certainly, this was not something that they would have considered under Bolas. The conflux of Alara still occurs. The 5 shards naturally desired to be whole again, and even in their separate state would draw towards one another. Nicol Bolas was merely aware that the conflux would occur, and took advantage of it to increase his own power. What is different, however, is the conflicts between the 5 shards. Without Nicol Bolas fanning the flames of war behind the scenes, the encounters between the people of the shards will be much more sudden, as they hadn't likely encountered one another until the conflux was complete. Perhaps peace between the non-Grixis shards would be possible, but it's also just as likely that the very sudden appearance of vastly different cultures all in one place will spark a much more intense war, one that none of the shard factions were prepared for. One change of note, however, is the creation of the Gatewatch, which would simply not occur in this timeline. The world of Zendikar is safe from the threat of the Eldrazi. Sarkhan Vol is never stationed at the Eye of Ugin by his draconic master. Jace and Chandra are never led there by Bolas's machinations, and the seal on the Eldrazi is never removed. The Titans remain, to this day, locked away behind their Hedron prisons. Gideon, Jace, Nissa, and Chandra have no need to band together to defeat Ulamog and Kozilek, and so the Gatewatch never forms. Emrakul never leaves Zendikar, and so the balance of Innistrad is preserved. The Eldrazi's madness does not ravage the plane, and its Archangel Avacyn still shines as a beacon of hope for humanity. The Hellvault's destruction brings with it the freedom of the lithomancer Nahiri. Though centuries of isolation within the Silver Prison drove her to the brink of madness, it was the devastation Zendikar suffered that ultimately pushed her over the edge. Now, she would return to her home to find it as full of life as ever. Most likely, she would settle down again to serve as an eternal guardian over the seal of the Eldrazi. Without a draconic master to dedicate himself to, Sarkhan would likely continue his adventures across the multiverse, searching for a grandiose dragon to serve. Perhaps his travels would take him to Ravnica, where he would become an attendant to the firemind Niv Mizzet, or he could end up on Dominaria, in awe of the mighty dragons of Shiv. One thing is for certain, Sarkhan Vol never ends up at the Eye of Ugin, and so never succumbs to madness. He will likely never return to the world of Tarkir, never travel back to its ancient past, and never saves the spirit dragon Ugin from death at Bolas's hands. The Tarkir of Khans is preserved, and the clans continue to wage their eternal war against one another, forever free from the tyranny of dragons. After the events of the Mending, Liliana Vess sought to find a way to preserve her youth and power. In the original timeline, she turns to Bolas, who helps broker a deal for her with 4 powerful demons. Liliana's soul is offered up as the prize in exchange for eternal youth. She would later go about destroying each of her demonic masters one by one, until ultimately she turns on Bolas himself during the War of the Spark. In this timeline, Bolas is not around to assist her in her deal, but Vess is nevertheless a cunning and determined woman. She will still seek out the demons herself, and will still gain the youth and power she desires. After some time, and after she acquires the power of the Chain Veil, she would inevitably turn on her demonic masters once again. It's very likely that Liliana would still slay Kothapet and Grizzlebrand, as she had the element of surprise against both demons when she killed them. Against Razaketh and Belzadlok, however, Liliana profited greatly from her allies in the Gatewatch. Without those allies, it's possible that she fails to defeat those 2 demons, and loses her life in the process. As for the rest of the Gatewatch, since they never come together to unite against a common foe, each one goes about a different life. Gideon likely settles into the Boros Legion, where he puts his invulnerability to use helping the citizens of Ravnica. Jace, meanwhile, still becomes the Living Guild Pact. Without the distractions of the Gatewatch, he performs his duties a bit more seriously, and rules over the city plane to the best of his ability. Nissa and Chandra never meet. Nissa likely never departs from Zendikar at all, staying among her fellow elves there for the foreseeable future. And Chandra, while impulsive and rash, will eventually find cause to return home to Kaladesh, where Pia's revolution would likely happen regardless. Tezzeret has no need to be on this metal world, having never become a servant of Bolas, so Chandra and her mother will have a much easier time securing victory for the rebels here. Ajani likely continues to travel the multiverse, helping those in need whenever he can. And Teferi, after eventually regaining his spark, will search for a way to return his home of Zalfir to the time stream. Maybe, after some time, some lurking shadow will eventually become a threat to the multiverse on a scale that demands the attention of many different planeswalkers. Perhaps Leshrac schemes to bring destruction to multiple worlds. Ob Nixilis will eventually reignite his spark and resume his multiversal conquest. Ashiok's research into the Phyrexians would have grievous consequences for many. Regardless of the threat, there are many heroic planeswalkers throughout reality, and all of them are ready to stand against evil. Ultimately, the history of the multiverse after the Mending would be very different without the presence of Nicol Bolas. But this was just my take on one of the possibilities. What do you think could be different? Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like or sharing this video with your friends. If you're subscribed to my channel and click the notification bell, you'll be alerted whenever I upload new videos. Finally, if you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like me to cover, feel free to let me know in the comments section below. Thanks again, and have a great day.